And then joining us today is Helder Guimarães. Helder is a world-renowned sleight of hand magician. He's received top honors from the Academy of Magical Arts in Hollywood, and in 2006 became the youngest ever world champion of card magic. The New York Times has described him as a master of illusions, and in their review of his last show, Borrowed Time, the Los Angeles Times described him as remarkably sincere and trustworthy for a man committed to deception. His newest one-man show is Invisible Tango, featuring direction by Jurassic World producer Frank Marshall, and just announced an original soundtrack by Moby. So Helder, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
So first off, I'd like to get into your background a bit. How did you get into magic, and what drew you to sleight of hand in particular?
So my father was kind of the reason why I started in magic. My father did and still does magic as a hobby, and when I was 3 days old, he took a photo of me holding playing cards, which is very ridiculous because it's a 3-day-old baby holding playing cards. And that was kind of something that was always a little bit on the back of my imagination, growing up, knowing that was the first photo that anyone, I was born in 82, and in 82 there was no phone, so people would not take photos as the birth is happening, so it would take some days to take photos. So with 3 days old, they take my first photo, and that's with playing cards. And fast forward a couple of years, when I was 3, there was a Christmas party in my kindergarten. And the owner of the kindergarten knew that my father did magic, so he said, "Do you want to do something for Helder's class and the classmates?" And he said, "Sure, I'll do it." And my father asked me, "Do you want to do something?" And, I'm 3, what do I know about life? I go "Yeah, sure." So I'll do it. And it was fun because all of a sudden I'm 3. Actually, when the show happened, I was already 4. So I was a big guy at that time. But basically, there was a moment where I did something very simple, but for the class, for my kindergarten class was like the best thing ever. I had the box. I would open the box. I would show the box empty. I would close the box. I would say the magic words. I would open the box, and the box was filled with candies. And I started throwing the candies out for the classmate. Not happening today. Not happening today. But and all of a sudden, I'm the hero for a couple of weeks, this is our friend that makes candy appear, that's the guy to hang out with. And I think that was kind of an interesting moment in terms of memory, because I still remember the feeling of, in the weeks following that party, kids coming to me and going that was amazing, that was great. And I just kept doing it, a little bit without knowing where it would take me. It just made kind of sense. So I kept evolving, doing a little bit more complex things, doing more interesting things. Around the age of 9, I think 9, 10, that's when I kind of went I don't know if this is for me. And I stopped. And I just stopped for 2-3 months. And then I was you know what? I can't. I really have to do this. I didn't know why, but there was something that was pushing me to go back. So I went basically back to doing magic without knowing why I was doing it, but having the feeling that I have to do it. And eventually at that time, now I'm going to go a little bit technical, but when you were a kid, your hands are smaller. So you can't really do sleight of hand the same way you can do when you start growing up. But when you are 12, you start going to that phase, 11, 12. You start having the ability to at least start on that route. And at that point, I've seen a show. I went to Madrid, and I saw a show of a magician that I've seen videos of him before, not on the internet, but on VHS, which, good times. But I've seen a bunch of videos from him, and now I got the opportunity to see him live, and he was amazing because he was still alive. His name is Juan Tamariz. He had a bunch of TV shows in Spain, but all his work revolves around playing cards and a sense of humor. And that for me just all of a sudden made complete sense. And I went like, this is it. You know, I always loved humor. I always loved comedians. I loved magic. So I said, I know this is it. I don't wanna be him, but I know that these two things are gonna be part of my journey. And so then I start to focus on playing cards and sleight of hand, and then it evolved from there.
Excellent, thank you. And then so
I give really long answers. So
Good to
just
know.
for you to know, next time you ask me something, just be careful.
duly noted. So then, Trent, going from just magic as a hobby to professional magic. So in 2006, you won the
Yes.
World Champions of Magic, and that's what kind of launched your career into professional magic. Also, from what I've heard, there was a bit of controversy there. They didn't believe your
Yes.
performance was possible.
Yes.
It's amazing. So yeah, can you tell a little more how you then became a professional at magic, I guess?
Well, like, that's actually a very short answer. Basically, you become a professional at magic when you get paid to do it on a regular basis.
Okay. Fascinating.
Now, you tell me. I think what you want to know is how I kind of went into that direction. So
Yeah.
I think since I'm 16, 17, I kind of go like, I really want to be a magician. That's what I want to be. You never know if it's possible or not, especially growing up in Portugal, like it's not necessarily the country that is best known for magic or to be able to live comfortably from just doing magic. So in my head, I always knew that if I wanted to become a magician, I would have to search for a more international career. And one of the ways of starting that career, I knew it would be to win a prize at the World Championship of Magic, because that will just trigger a lot of invitations and people trying to hire you. Like, so I knew that. So a few years before, actually 4 years before that, I went to theater school because I knew that was another thing, is that in the journey to find, let's say, my path, all of a sudden I randomly encounter myself doing theater and doing theater workshops, and it makes sense to me to combine all those things: humor, theater, and magic. And so I go like, I have to go to university. Actually, the first university I went to was to computer science. So I could have actually been here, but seated there. But I really don't know how you guys spend so much time seated in front of computers. The first year I went to university in computer science, we had like group tasks that we had to do, and with a group of 4 people, and 3 of them would be sitting in front of the screen working, and I would be making jokes to entertain them. That's basically my first year in college. And then I went like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I really had a talk with my father and my mother, and I said, I know I can do this, but I'm not gonna be happy, and I'm not gonna be able to do this professionally for the rest of my life. So I really want to go and study theater because I think it can help with magic. Which for my father loves magic, my mother loves magic as well, but as a father and mother, they were very worried about my future. So they really were like, if he wants to be a magician and his backup plan is theater, it's not, you're not making right choices. So, but they finally heard me, and they understand I was gonna pursue it anyway. So we made a pact, and the pact was, you go to theater school, you have 4 years to finish it, because that's the degree length, so like you have 4 years to finish it. If by the end of the fourth year, after the fourth year, you have 1 year to become fully independent, if you can't do that, you go back to computer science and you finish the degree. And I go like, deal. So I went to theater school, those are the 4 years. I've learned a lot. I've met other people that were very like-minded, not magician-wise, but like they were trying to combine different things with theater and performance art and dance, for example. And so all of a sudden, I find myself that I'm in a group of people that I can grow up with and learn from. During those 4 years, I start doing like small shows around my hometown. I got a lot of stage time. That was a very helpful thing. I was, I know this is a long answer, but I warn you. There was a place that was doing a lot of theater shows and comedy shows, but they had no magic show. And a friend of mine was working one of the comedy shows, and he said, you should talk with this guy to see if he wants to have you work there. Okay, I went there. I said, like, I'm a magician. I would love to be able to bring a show here. And he goes like, yeah, we've had a magician. We really don't want magic. And I was like, okay, how many music shows do you have here per month? 6, 7? And they go like, if you had one bad music concert, would you stop doing music? And he kind of understood. So he brought me, and I did a show. It was a room for 120 people. I think I had like 40 or 45 people. But I did a good show. He liked it. People liked it. He said, come back with the same show next month. So I brought the same show. Next month, we had like 60 people. And he said, well, if you want to come back, you have to bring a different show. But I'll give you 2 dates on the same month. So the next month, I create a full 1-hour show for the venue, different than the one before. We did two dates, and he said, okay, bring the same show back to the next month. Okay, so now I'm doing the same show 4 times. The 5th month, he tells me, I can give you 4 dates, but you have to change the show every month now. And I go like, you know what? Let's do it. So for 2 years, every month I was doing a different 1-hour performance. Wow. And so that just gave me a lot of stage time, doing what I like, creating things. So it just made me like really like think about magic in a way that I still think today, but it helped me just like develop a lot of, you have no time to make judgments if things are in the right way. So sometimes you get on stage and you get really awkward moments, but that was the time. That was the time to do it. That was the right moment to do it. So those are the 2 years prior to the world champion of magic. So I really was very comfortable when it came to go there and just do 10 minutes, because basically that's what you have to do. So I've been doing 1-hour shows different for 2 years almost. So 10 minutes seemed like, I think I can do this. But I wasn't super confident that, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to win, or, like I wasn't confident on that. I just knew that I could select 10 really good minutes to go there and have an impact. So that's what I did. I started working on the routine a year before. I had the concept of what I wanted to do. I started developing it. I went to a couple of competitions, one in Spain, where I actually won the prize as well, and another one in England, where I didn't even place. Which was fine, like that's how things are. And then I go to the World Championship in 2006 in Sweden, Stockholm. I go inside of the room. Well, actually, 5 minutes before, there was this moment where technically I should be extremely nervous, but I was extremely calm. And I don't even know why, because I didn't have that much experience at the time. But I just had this moment where it's like, you know what, just have fun. Just go there, out there, have fun. So I entered the room. I would say that from so it's 3,000 magicians watching you. Although
No
the
pressure.
room for what I do, because I do its close-up, the room I think maybe would sit like 200 people, I would say. But there were monitors broadcasting to other rooms and outside. So from those 200 people, maybe 20 people knew who I was. So I got in the room, I get a nice round of applause, very people welcome me. I go. I don't remember anything I've done. So like in my head, it was just like, fuck it, let's, it happened, I don't know. And all I know is that at the end, I'm having a standing ovation and I'm coming out of that room. And as I walk outside, I have people coming to me and go like, what the fuck just happened? And it was just this very surreal moment because what I was at that moment didn't change. Like that was who I was. But all of a sudden, there were 3,000 magicians that knew my name that 10 minutes before didn't. And that was kind of an eye-opener that sometimes it's not who you are, but it's how people see you that really changes and makes an impact. 2 days after that, they announced the winners. And actually, I knew I won before they announced because there is this moment at the end of the convention where the winners go on stage and they perform for everyone. And normally they have everyone that got more than 80 points on score to perform. So even if you have more than 80, it doesn't mean you are the first, because if in your category 2 people have more than that, one is first and the other one is second. But in my category, I was the only one that got more than 80 points. So when they announced the names, it was very clear that, oh, I've won. I wasn't even in the room when they did that. So my parents were there. So they heard it, and they came out running, looking for me on the halls of the convention center. And I'm just walking with a deck of cards in my hand, just walking, not in my. And all of a sudden, I see my mother. My father wasn't there. My mother running with a bunch of other Portuguese people around her, going like, "You won, you won!" And I'm like, "What happened? I'm not aware. I think tomorrow is the award ceremony." So I'm like, in my head, it's like, "What happened? No, you're gonna go to the final gala. So you won. You are the only one in." And so someone kind of blocks me and go like and explains to me what happened. And I was like, "Oh!" And all of a sudden, that dream, because to be honest with you, I never wanted to have like the title World Champion of Magic. That didn't matter to me. But there were other people in that list of winners that were mentors of mine and people I really admired. And so for me, it was more, I made the list with people I've admired. And so when I realized that, I was so happy and really nervous, because now you have to perform as the world champion of Magic. So it's a very different stake now, but everything went fine. And so after that, I start having calls and emails about going to Japan, Australia, United States. My first travel to the United States was because I won that prize, and I got booked to do shows here. So another very long answer.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's why we're here. They don't want to hear me talk. So getting back to your shows, and it sounds like you're very practiced creating shows. Much of what you do, sleight of hand, is very up close, very personal, as opposed to you're on a stage making cars disappear. So how does that impact the design of your shows, or what kind of performances you choose to create?
It's just the type of thing I'm attracted to, Like I've always loved, since I saw that show I mentioned in Madrid, I really like the interaction with the audience. I really like the fact that I never know what the audience is gonna do when I ask them, even if it's a simple thing or common gesture as pick a card. If I've told you all the answers I've got from just that, you have the plain one, which is just people actually go like, okay, let's collaborate. Other people go like, no. and then they start like just messing around. Or you never know, and that for me is really exciting, like, because that's kind of, it's life, you never know. So I love that my shows have that interaction component. Then there is the part of me loving playing cards per se. I love the object. It's the symbolic side of it, the fact that it evolved and through ages, but got to a point where now a deck of cards, it's what it is, and it's never going to change again. It's almost like a perfect object in itself, and the variety of things you can accomplish with that unique object. That's the other part that attracts me, like, and so all those things combined end up making me want to design my experiences around those things. A deck of cards, which means that either you have a camera and projection, and then you can have a bigger audience watching you. And I prefer not to, because I think the camera always distances a little bit people from the actual experience. So that means that you have to design the experience for people to be able to be near you and be able to see it. And then the interaction part, like, I don't want to be on a stage where I can't actually have someone touch what I'm doing, like, so all those things combined make that I could have a car on stage, but that would be the full stage, would be the size of the car, like, so it would not be very practical. So I just want that proximity to be part of it. And of course, that makes that the next step about it is you end up deciding on things that are very personal, and you end up telling stories that are part of your life, and stories that can make the audience relate to who you are as a performer. And all those things combine with my background in theater and me liking the sense of humor, end up me mixing all those things and just doing all the things I like together. It's every time I'm very excited about every time I'm creating a new show, because I get I think it's where I feel more myself. Like, I can't say I'm a shy person, but I'm not like as overt or as expansive as I am on stage when I'm out of stage. I have a bunch of funny stories of people meeting me after shows and not realizing it's me, because they go like, how can you be the same person that goes on stage and says all those things and is so open about it, and then in here in the table you're the only person that was not speaking, like, so, and that is something that changes me a bit. It's like when I go on stage, I just become more comfortable, and I can't really explain why.
Makes sense. And so you described yourself as a storyteller, and many of your shows you like to explore themes. Invisible Tango is about mystery. Mm-hmm. Your last one, Borrowed Time, was about memory. So how does kind of magic help you tell the stories that you want to tell?
I don't think magic helps necessarily tell the story, but gives it a perspective on those themes and on who I am. Because, and this is something that it's easy to relate, but it's not necessarily easy to explain. I look at things around me as illusions or magic. So I'm always trying to understand where is something I'm not seeing, or how I am seeing this, but actually if I go to that angle, it looks different. I do that every 10 minutes in my life, like, so that's something I'm just interested in, like how people craft realities so that you think it's real, but it's actually what someone else did for you to believe it's real, like, and, not going further, but just look at politics, and how that works on that specific area, you know. So that happens in every single thing in our life, and we just don't think too much about that. I like to think about that. So when I approach those subjects, like memory, for example, or mystery, I try to see it from the angle of a magician looking at it. And so magic just is a language that allows me to communicate those ideas. And because I incorporate other things like humor and theater, I can explore different sides of the same theme according to those different languages and create kind of a unique moment. But for me, magic is not different than theater or comedy. It's just an artistic language that allows you to express a point of view. And eventually, my shows have a point of view that is mine because I'm the one creating them and performing them. But I also always want the shows to be open to interpretation, so that whenever you bring your own vision to what you're seeing, you can make a decision, or at least. I heard one time someone, a plastic artist, that was saying, I want people to come out of seeing my work with more doubts than when they got in. And I don't necessarily want people to be doubting all their life when they go to see a show of mine. I think that's kind of not very productive. But if you can question one little thing in your life, that the next day you have to make a decision, and you can go, you know what, maybe there is something here for me to think that I've never thought about, I'm happy with that. If you go out of my show and you go like, I really had a great time, that is something I'm very pleased about too. I think entertainment for itself, it's something very, very valuable. But I always want people to take something out of the show when they go, and I don't want them to go like, this is the truth, because I don't believe there is one truth. So if you can just get one question in your life that you've never thought before, I'll be happy about that.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And so you touched on this briefly. So when you're designing a new trick, you're taking inspiration from the world around you. To some extent, for art, you can paint what's in front of you. Comedy, you can, tell stories from your life. How do you take, your inspiration and kind of transform it into the deck of cards and the actual trick?
I think it's all a question of metaphors, like when I'll give you an example of a moment that I've lived as a spectator in a magic performance that I think illustrates how I see it. So, and it was from my mentor, or one of my mentors, the person who I saw when I was 12. He has a moment in one of his performances where he makes a deck of cards vanish, and that's the moment. It's like he has a deck of cards. It's between his hands. People are grabbing him around, and then when he opens his hands, the deck is not there. When he opens his hands, the deck is not there, and. That for itself, it's just a magic moment. Everyone reacts. And the next question is where the deck is. Everyone goes for that question. And he explores that in a way that is not magic, is really theatrical. Because he makes you believe that the deck is going to reappear, and it doesn't. And then when you think, okay, then he makes you believe again the deck is going to reappear in another part, and it doesn't. And all of a sudden, for the next 5 minutes, you are reliving the fact that the deck is not going to come back. And it's funny if you think about it now. But in the moment you live it, it's kind of like you feel bad because you go like, oh, and you feel incomplete. And that's what you wanted to explore with that moment. It's that the audience would have the sense of incompleteness. So things like that is how you can transform certain feelings that you want to create in your audience and actually make it in a show or in a performance and translate that to a magic language, you know, like, and I think that's just a very simple example to understand, but there are other things that you can do with magic along the same lines. It's just a question of, so like I said, like what I like about magic is that the fact that when I interact with the audience, I never know what is coming back. But also magic happens in the now, happens in the moment. It's not, that's one of the big difference between a theater play in a common sense and a magic show is in theater play, you understand there is this timeline that people are representing, and at one point you get in and you are actually, you want to know what happens next in the story, but you know that they are representing something else. In magic, if I am talking with you, I am talking with you. It's not like it's not a character that is talking with you. And the same thing with the moment, you know, like this is not representing something. This is happening now. And that moment where you share the same space with an audience and you can actually talk with them in that moment, and they know that is happening then, and it's never happening again, because if it happens again, it's always going to be slightly different. That is something that I like that. So I like to use those moments in the show to actually create feelings and sensations and pushing a little bit the boundary of what can be done with magic.
Oh, well, thank you. So pivoting a little bit to a different kind of magic, yep, the magic of the big screen. You recently got done. You were a consultant on Ocean's 8. Can
Yes.
you tell me a little bit more about the role you played there?
Yes. So I'm in New York. I'm doing a show, and all of a sudden I got an email from someone who watched the show saying like, we're doing this movie and we have a part of the script that we would like for some people that are related to deception to read about and make sure that we got this right. At that point, I had no idea what movie it was. So then I got on the phone, and then I realized it's an Ocean's 11 spin-off with women's. It's going to be called Ocean's 8. I know nothing about the cast. I didn't even know the movie was in production. But the movie was going to be was the headquarters for the movie shot was in New York. So I basically met with the director, the co-writer, because the director also wrote, so the director, the co-writer, and a producer, and we basically have a brief conversation about that small part of the script. And I explain, you know what, this, in real life, this can be done like this, or like this, or like this. And something that they thought could just happen in one way, I gave them like 7 or 8 different options of how that can actually happen in real life. And it's about a con, you know, like, which is something I really like, you know, like not as a practitioner, but as someone, you know, yeah, but I just find the psychology of con artists very fascinating. So I've studied it for a time, and so when I got there, I go like, hey, it can be done like this or like this or like this, and all of a sudden it's like I opened the door for them. Like we didn't even know that was possible. So they invited me at that point, not just for that scene, but they said like, you know what, it would be great if you could work with the actresses on helping them understand how the psychology of deception works. and so that's why I got brought in. And so then that's when I found out that I was going to be working with Sandra Bullock and Kate Blanchett, teaching them some sleight of hand and teaching them the psychology of pickpocket and things like that. So they brought me basically on that role. And so it was just a very surreal experience to me to all of a sudden be teaching all these amazing actresses something. And then I got to be on the floor of the filming on a couple of scenes, and that was it. It was really fun.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong. So, also, you actually taught Sandra Bullock how to pick pockets and set her on the director. And
yes, so there is. I don't know if you guys saw the movie, but there is
not yet.
Okay, but there is a scene in the movie where she actually does not pickpocket, but does something that is pickpocket related, and they just wanted to. Of course, in a movie, it's all made up, but they just wanted to have the feeling of how can if we're gonna do this in real life, how will this be done? And so basically, we staged that moment to look like yes, this could actually happen in real life. So yes, so that's
Okay.
true.
Yeah, and so you mentioned briefly, but so in a movie you have cuts, you have editing. You don't actually have to pick the pocket. So then, does kind of having you bring your expertise in kind of physical misdirection, sleight of hand, just help the audience stay more engaged or believable, or kind of what is that bringing?
I think it's just a question of that. It's like how can you shot so that this looks real but works on camera? And I think my role on a couple of the moments was like how can we shoot this so that it looks good on camera and it's actually close to what would happen in real life. It's less about and in this movie it was a very particularly genre because I'm not doing actually magic to the movie or not creating magic to be happening in the movie. It's more a question of how would this happen in real life? Let's try to reproduce this in a movie sequence. And shot it in a way that story-wise it makes sense. People can follow that, like I don't know if anyone here saw the movie, but there is like an opening scene where she goes in a store and she steals a couple of things. How that is done tells a story to the audience that when the moment of the con happens, the audience can be on her side. And if the audience is on her side, the reaction is much better than if they are still figuring out what is happening. So those little things, they really matter when you're making a movie. And so I try to help as best as to my knowledge to things like that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'd just like to remind everybody his new show premieres at the Geffen Playhouse in May. But so we have some time to take some questions from the audience. So just
yes, I'll just like to say something. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me before we go into Q&A. But because of that, I talked with the Geffen, and basically they made a promo code that is Google Talks. So if you go on the website and you want to buy tickets and you put Google Talks, you get 20% off discount. So
does that work if we already bought tickets?
Yes. I don't know. You have to talk. That you have to talk with the Geffen. I don't think that has retroactive things, but.
But thank you.
My pleasure.
Just raise your hands if you have any questions. We'll fastball the mic at you.
Nice throw.
So thanks for coming. It was a super interesting talk. So feel free to tell me to just go away. But
go away.
Well, okay. So, what is your?
I'm not joking. Just okay. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding.
So
now you can sit down. Sit down.
Okay.
That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous.
How do you figure out just the technical mechanics of like a new trick that you're developing? I've obviously never been in this space, so I don't understand, like, I want to, be able to pull the correct card out of a deck, or I want to do this or that or this other thing. So what's kind of the general process of, one, deciding what exactly do you want to do on stage, and then two, how are you going to go about executing it?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I have an answer per se, but I'll try to do my best. So most of the things I decide to do on stage come out from stories, come out from something that appeals to me on the story side of it, or in the moment I want to create with the audience. So that's the reason why I decide to do something. How do I end up creating those? So there is a lot of magic has a very rich history of people that created and decided to share with other people their creations. So you are always studying and you are always learning things that eventually one day you can go like, you know what, I can apply that concept. So there are a bunch of concepts that I would say that they are finite in terms of like they are limited to a certain amount, but then the application of those concepts, it's infinite. It just goes with your imagination and your ability to actually implement those concepts in different ways. So when I have a problem, and I really like to start with problems that I go like, I have no idea how I can do this. So now it's almost like this is the illusion, because I know that what I'm trying to do, it's actually impossible. So now it's how can I create this illusion? And now I kind of start going back step by step. Like if I want to reach this moment, what would I have to do right before this? Maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. And then you end up with, I would say, maybe sometimes 7, 8, sometimes more, sometimes less, basically solutions, and then you actually start trying them and go like, okay, let me try this. Oh, there is something missing here, or actually it's not that deceptive, because then you have to make that judgment. Is like, is the audience going to be deceived with this idea or not? So it's all those things combined. And on the side, you always have the story going like, that really does not match the story. So this method is completely discarded because it's not faithful to the story I wanna convey. This one is closer. Okay, so now this one is something I can work on and I can develop on top of that basic idea or first idea. And then eventually you come up with moments and pieces that you're proud of or that you think work. But at the end of the day, you have to do it. And if the audience says no, you go like, okay, you just go home. Then you really go home. Then you really go home. But it's those things combined that is kind of the process to get on stage and do something.
So you tell stories and send messages in lots of different, I'll say, audiences. Like there's 50 people here or so. You do shows where it's 25 people. The Geffen's 120 or something. TED is, TED Talk is a lot more, and then social media is however many. How do those different spaces kind of like, how do you decide what story you want to tell, or how you pick the words, or how do you decide how to convey the message in these different environments, and how does that change, particularly when you're speaking to a larger audience?
It does, because you always have to adapt the show you do to the room you're playing, so, and of course the more you learn how to do it, the more easy is to create moments of intimacy in larger spaces. Like in that sense, so the last show I've done in Portugal was for 900 people, and like at that point, it's not an intimate show no longer, but it doesn't mean it can't be an intimate experience for people. You just have to do certain choices in terms of scenic design and in terms of text and in terms of, for example, in that show there is a camera that projects the top of the table and there's a big screen. But you can't overuse it, because all of a sudden, if you overuse it, people feel that they are always seeing things on the screen, and they don't feel that. So you have to decide and craft the show more around the technical challenges that you're gonna have. And I think the bigger the space is, the more you have to do it that way. In a smaller space where everyone can observe you and be closer to you, then it's the story that really drives more the creation of everything. That's why I prefer that. It's because then I can really focus in what I want to say and how I want to tell the story. How I go about selecting the stories, it comes from life experiences and moments I'm living in and doubts I have. It's not that often, not that rare that I find myself doing a show to try to answer to something I don't have an answer. Like now, this show I'm doing, it's about how we deal with mystery in a world that has information at the fingertips and that people are not willing to not know something. How many conversations do you have per month where all of a sudden you have a doubt and immediately you take the phone to answer that doubt? That's a mechanism that in certain cases makes sense. In others, you should not do that. You pull a little bit from the end of your brain and try to deal with that in a different way, because it can be very useful. And actually saying this at Google just feels weird but it's one thing is the ability of being able to have that information. And I think that's great. How we value that information and how we use it and how we leave space for mystery, because mystery can be so much important in our life as well. That balance, it's something that I personally am always struggling to understand, and I believe other people probably too. So the show deals a little bit with that, and it's just a story and the perspective from my side of the table of maybe how we can all incorporate a little bit more mystery in our lives.
So I will say the having gotten to have the experience of sitting with you on table and being a participant is something that will always stick with me.
Okay.
And
thank you.
One of the things I realized that helped contribute to that sense of wonder is the fact that your style of things performance was something that, I had no idea what was going to happen. But there are, of course, other people who in their performances set up an expectation where, for example, if it's a prediction or something, where you sort of know what the end goal is, right? Where you know what they're going to do, and the question is, the setup is that it's impossible, but they're somehow still going to do it. What do you think draws you towards the other style where there isn't a clear expectation, where someone has no idea what's going to happen, that you haven't necessarily set up that this is the thing I'm going towards, and instead you just surprise them?
I actually use both when I'm doing a show. I use moments like you're saying, setting up an expectation and trying to deliver that. I just like the fact that the audience is less worried about the end and more interested in the journey. So that's why I prefer a little bit the surprise style, as you said, has to do with that. The idea of where is this going? Let's live this story together. It's more on that side that my preference takes. But in a 1 hour show, you have to kind of play with that. There is actually an article in the magic world that talks about surprise versus suspense and how that affects one, the creation, other, the audience experience of the show. And I think both are valuable, and I think both play a part on my work. I really like the fact that I'm sharing the journey with the audience at the same time, instead of telling you, by the way, I already know where this is going to end, and so now you're just watching, but you know where this is going to end. I like that part to also be kind of unclear and unknown, so that when it happens, you go like, wait a minute. I love that type of it's a game almost with the audience that you're playing, and I like that game of the audience almost being a detective during the process, going like, what, why is he doing this? Why? Like I like that moment. But to be honest, it's just like because of that, I like the audience to be in this boat with me in terms of journey.
Hi.
Hi.
So when you are watching other performers, is it easy for you to deconstruct their tricks and illusions, or are you also amazed? And are there any illusions that have stumped you to this day that you still can't tell how they did it?
It's hard to let go the magician side of it. I admit it. So when I'm seeing a performance, it's almost like I'm seeing with a double brain, like I'm trying to enjoy it without thinking too much. But then there are certain moments that definitely click just because I know how things are done. So all of a sudden it's really hard just to let it go completely. That said, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate a performance when it's well done. In fact, I always say this as a comparison situation. If you play the piano and you go to a concert and someone is playing a recital or something like that, and they are playing, and you know how to play piano, you are listening to the melody, but you are also listening to their choices and how they decide to do certain parts quicker or with more strength or all that. And so when I'm seeing a magic performance, normally I'm also seeing those choices and seeing where those choices will make the audience arrive in terms of impossibility. And so I really appreciate, and I sometimes it's even more beautiful to be able to see the audience reaction and also that, But there have been a couple of times I can't say that it's the common thing, but where all of a sudden I'm in a moment and I don't understand how something happens, and I just love it. Because I don't have that reaction that many times. So when I have it, I really cherish, and the only reason for me after to try to find an answer to that is if I find any valuable on that to be able to use on my work. But as there have been, I would say that 2 or 3 cases where I've seen something that I go like, what I'm seeing has no relation to my type of work, so I just prefer not to know, and I really don't. Because I don't have that many moments like that, so I really cherish those. So I really don't want to know unless it can move something forward on my work, and then I'll probably will search for an answer. But there are things I really don't know how I may have a sense, an idea, but that's different than actually knowing. That's a very interesting difference between being a magician, not being a magician, and seeing a magic show. If you see a magic show and you kind of find out 10% of what you're seeing, as let's suppose what you call the trick. I really hate the word trick. dogs do tricks for me, but like I call them pieces or a repertoire or something like that. But like imagine you're seeing a magic piece and you find 10%. If you are an audience member and you know nothing about magic, you go like, oh, I know how he did it, and you just know 10%. If I am a magician and I'm seeing the same thing and I know 90%, I go like, yeah, I really don't know how he did it, because I'm aware that I'm missing those extra 10%. So it's a very interesting thing how we relate to knowing or not knowing. If we know a lot, we also know that what we don't know. If we know very little, we think we know more than we actually know. It's true. It's true in any case. And with magic, you can say that to a test. I've been in so many interesting conversations after shows of mine with friends that go like, I really liked your show, but I figured this one out. And I just go like, oh, really? And so I go down the road with them and go like, so tell me how I do it. And they start going step by step. And I know there is a hole in the middle of the conversation where they're just going to go like, oh, I really don't know. But I led them to that hole very like, oh, really? So how it's like, oh, really? Oh, and this, oh, yeah, I really don't know. Okay. So shut up next time. Just shut up. And that's okay. Like, to be honest with you, I'm not like, if people find out, they find out. It's like, I always say this as a joke, but it's true. Like, I'm very privileged of doing what I do, because I bring joy to people and I make them happy and it's entertaining. You know, like, what I do falls in the bright side of life, which for me, I'm very fortunate to be part of it. Like, this is not like you're curing a life-death situation on a patient, and if you fail, that is tough. You know, like if I fail something or if you find out, life goes exactly in the same direction, you know. Like, so I'm not that uncomfortable if people find out. I always try my best to make sure that they have the mystery for their life. You know, that's my goal. But it's so funny to lead people into these conversations and having them realize that they actually don't know. It's just really funny for me.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, we have time for maybe one more question. So.
Hey. Can you tell us a little bit about how you practice? I mean, sure, like at your stage, like you've mastered the double lift, but are you still doing it like 100 times a day, or what does your practice routine look like?
No, I don't do it 100 times a day because it's boring. But you definitely practice the same way that you would say you have. There is a difference between getting the skill to the level you want to get it, and then keeping the skill at that level. So to keep the skill, you don't have to technically practice that much, but you still have to do it on a regular basis and consistent basis. But I'm always trying to improve certain things or invent new skills or invent new things. So I'm always focused more on that side than necessarily keeping the skill level where I am, because doing that ends up protecting what I've accomplished before. But you have to do it every day. So like every day I have a few hours that I just spend on the table, what we say, shuffling cards, which is actually not shuffling cards, but just doing a bunch of things and finding things. I'm always finding new, interesting details that can take things to the next step. But you do that in front of a mirror. You do that to close friends. You know, when you want to do something. Normally, I'm at dinner with friends, and if I normally don't like to just do things per se. But if I want to practice something, all of a sudden, all I have to do is take the deck of cards and put it on the table, because someone is going to ask me to do something. And then I go like, okay, that's a good chance to practice that, because it's a safe environment, you know. So it's all, you find those moments to do things like that, and to find the audience reactions, so that then you can incorporate those in longer pieces and moments, like a show like I'm doing now. But yes, definitely you have to keep practicing every day. Unless you want to quit, and then it would be fine not to do anything.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you, Helder, so
My
much
pleasure.
for coming and spending some time with us.
Thank you very much for having me.